back to the Royal Daily Tea. So today we're going to film the third episode in the Royal Bride series. Today we're going to cover royal wedding gowns. Now, in my opinion, the number one wedding gown or royal wedding gown of the century belongs to Grace Kelly, known as Princess Grace of Monaco. Now, at the time when Grace Kelly became engaged to Prince Rainier of Monaco, she was a huge A-list movie star and Academy Award-winning movie star at the height of her movie career. So it sent shockwaves throughout the world when she announced that she was giving up her acting career to become a royal princess. So, of course, everyone was super delighted by the news, and it became a huge media frenzy. Now, MGM, who had her under a 7-year contract, it is rumored that Prince Rainier had to agree to let them film the wedding in order for her to be released from her contract. Now, this wedding had over 600 wedding guests and was seen by over 30 million people on TV. Grace Kelly's wedding gown was actually a gift from MGM Studios. It was designed by MGM Studios costume designer Helen Rose. It took over 36 seamstresses and over 6 weeks to make this gown. Now, this gown was immaculately made. There were no seams visible. They worked and made it so delicate, literally to perfection. So this dress was so elaborate that it broke into 10 separate pieces. They wanted to give her the fairy tale princess look, and they literally built the dress on top of her piece by piece. It was made up of a lace bodice, a slip, a skirt support and under bodice, foundation, ruffled and smoothing petticoats that went underneath a pleated silk foulée skirt, followed by a train insert and silk foulée cummerbund completed the outfit. Now, her dress was so elaborate that they used over 400 yards of fabric. Now, that included 25 yards of silk taffeta, 100 yards of silk net, and they used a 125-year-old Brussels lace. Not to mention her dress had over 800,000 sequins and 1,500 pearls and rhinestones. So Grace Kelly did not wear a royal tiara for her wedding day. Instead, she opted for a beautiful Juliet cap that held her veil in place. The Juliet cap was decorated with seed pearls, orange blossom, and a tulle veil that had over 90 yards in length. So she also had a very unique design to her veil. It was called a circular veil that had the important purpose of making her face visible from almost every angle, so her 600 guests and the estimated TV audience of 30 million could have a clear view of her face from every angle. Now, also on her veil, they had an appliqued lace motif around the edges, and it included 2 tiny lovebirds. So instead of a huge bouquet of flowers, Grace opted for a small bunch of lilies of the valley, as well as she carried an embellished Bible that was covered in lace and pearls down the aisle. Now, a lot of people thought that she wore flats on her wedding day because Prince Rainier and her were very similar in height, but she actually wore a beautiful pair of 2.5-inch heels that were designed by David Evans. They were covered in seed pearls and lace. And a very fun fact, he actually embossed her name in the left inside of her shoe, and on the right inside of the shoe was Prince Rainier's name. He also put in a copper penny for good luck. But again, this wedding dress was just gorgeous, one of the most legendary, iconic royal wedding brides in history, and in my opinion, people are still taking inspiration from Princess Grace's iconic wedding dress. So Princess Diana, her wedding dress and her wedding is what started my love with the royal family. To me, when I saw her as a child, she looked like Cinderella had come to life. All she needed was a glass slipper. I was in love and smitten with her the minute I saw her come out of that carriage, and that long 25-foot train was like a miracle. It was stunning, and no one had ever seen a train that long. It was the longest one in history. I believe the one before that was only 20 feet. Now, Charles and Diana were married at St. Paul's Cathedral on the 29th of July, 1981. They had over 3,500 wedding guests. They decided to choose St. Paul's Cathedral because, one, it was a very large church. It's a beautiful church, able to hold a full choir. They had 3,500 wedding guests. And a fun fact, Princess Grace and her son, Prince Albert, were in attendance for this wedding. Now, the wedding gown was created by Welsh designers, a married couple by the name of Elizabeth and David Emanuel, and they decided that this wedding gown had to be large and magnificent because they were going into a huge chapel. St. Paul's Cathedral is huge, so you couldn't just have a very small and basic wedding gown. It needed to be very elaborate, very fairy tale, very princess, very over the top to make a statement. So Princess Diana's dress, the shape and style, was very much about the 80s, very big, very over the top. Again, they wanted to make it very grand for this wedding. The dress did have a very fitted bodice that was overlaid with panels of antique lace that belonged to Prince Charles's great-grandmother, Queen Mary. Again, she had the big puffed sleeves that were trimmed with taffeta bows and ruffles. Now, the skirt itself was very full-bodied, making a very feminine and classic kind of silhouette. The curved neckline showed off, Princess Diana's nice long neck, but it didn't reveal too much. It was still very modest. It was still very royal. Now, the fabric was specifically spun at a British silk farm. The gown was largely composed of antique lace and silk taffeta. Now, it did have some intricate sequins and pearls that were hand sewn onto the gown. Now, Diana did have the color of the gown dyed to a royal ivory rather than pure white. Now, Diana did wear her own tiara that came from her family, the Spencer family tiara. It was an 18th century heirloom that had been gifted to her grandmother, Cynthia Spencer, Countess Spencer, by Lady Spencer in 1919. Diana continued to wear the Spencer tiara throughout her royal marriage. Now, Diana and Prince Charles are also very similar in height. They're both around 5'10", so she wasn't going to wear huge heels for her wedding day, but she did have a very specific shoe designed for her wedding. She worked with celebrity shoemaker Clive Shelton, and these wedding shoes took 6 months to make. Now, they were low-heeled satin and lace slippers that were decorated with exactly 500 sequins, 100 seed pearls, and suede sole arches with a tiny C and a tiny D that were painted underneath the heel. Now, there were a couple of secret items that were sewn into her wedding gown. The Emanuels had sewed an 18-karat gold horseshoe-shaped trinket studded with white diamonds into the gown's label for good luck. They also incorporated a very small blue bow into the waistband of the elaborate gown, in keeping with their tradition, something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. So another interesting fact is that they actually had designed a wedding day parasol for her to wear just in case it was going to rain, because the weather was very unpredictable at the time. And they also had designed a second backup wedding gown just in case she had to wear this wedding dress if something happened. Now, we don't know what the second wedding gown looked like. It could have been a different design altogether. But the interesting part is the mystery wedding gown disappeared. They don't know what happened to it. It literally vanished from the studio after the wedding. So somebody somewhere has a secret Princess Diana wedding gown that nobody knows about. Now, Queen Elizabeth had a beautiful and very unique gown. It was very much at the times of the 1940s. This was around, after World War II, so things were a lot different then, not to be over extravagant. Even though people were definitely cutting back, this was still a royal wedding, a future queen, and so, of course, they had to make a beautiful gown. Now, her gown was designed by royal dressmaker Norman Hartnell. And he didn't skimp on anything because, again, it was the most important wedding gown commission he ever received. And he wanted to make sure it was the most beautiful dress he had ever made. Now, it took over 350 women 7 weeks to make her royal wedding gown. Now, she did use coupons to actually pay for it. She did pay for her own wedding dress. The princess didn't have an unlimited budget because, again, it was during the wartime. Rationing was still in place for everyone, including the royal family. So the government granted the bride 200 extra clothing coupons in addition to the ones she had saved. Now, the wedding dress was actually inspired by a Renaissance painting by Botticelli. The masterpiece Primavera inspired the gown's motifs, with the overall theme of rebirth and growth after World War II. Hartnell invoked this by covering the gown with wheat, roses, and star-shaped flowers in gold and silver thread. The dress also featured over 10,000 pearls. Now, Queen Elizabeth's dress also had a very long 15-foot train. The star pattern fabric woven in Essex stretched far down the aisle. So Queen Elizabeth opted for the Queen Mary's fringe tiara. Actually broke on the day of her wedding. Her jeweler had to fix it, but you can noticeably see kind of a big gap toward the center of the tiara. Now, apparently her wedding day bouquet of flowers went missing, so she had to end up using a different bouquet for her wedding, but the actual one she had signed off on had gone missing. There was also another hidden component of the gown. There was a secret shamrock that was sewn into the skirt of the gown on the left side. The designer didn't even tell the queen he had put it in there. He put it in there for good luck. So this must be a very traditional, superstitious thing that many royal brides incorporate some kind of good luck charm into their wedding outfit. Now, her wedding shoes were actually open-toed wedding shoes. They were a pair of satin sandals that Hartnell had specifically designed. They had silver buckles on both sides that were studded with small pearls. So Sarah Ferguson married Prince Andrew in July of 1986. They got married in Westminster Abbey, and she had a beautiful, iconic 80s wedding gown that was different from Diana's. I think it was very important for her to have her own unique look and not be compared too much to Princess Diana. Now, her wedding dress had a scoop neck design and a very fitted bodice, almost like a corset, and gave her a beautiful silhouette design. Now, her designers specifically chose what they call a Duchess satin because they did not want her dress to crease the way that Princess Diana's dress had creased. So they chose a Duchess satin for the creamiest material, and it would never crease throughout the ceremony. Now, her dress did have a lot of embroidery in a silver thread that was decorated with bumblebees and thistles. These were the symbols of the Ferguson family coat of arms, along with anchors and waves that represented Andrew's sailing background. Now, Sarah also did have a long train. Her train was around 17 feet long, and she did have the initials A&S in silver beads on her train to symbolize Andrew and Sarah. So when Sarah walked down the aisle, she opted for a huge, elaborate floral headpiece that was made of gardenias. Apparently this was Prince Andrew's favorite flower, but there was a hidden meaning between why she did this. So she walks down the aisle as a commoner wearing this huge floral headpiece, and when she came back around during the mid part of the ceremony, I believe after they signed the royal document, she came out sporting a tiara to symbolize she's a duchess. So she goes in a commoner and she comes out a duchess. This was the meaning for them switching her headpiece mid-ceremony. Now, the interesting thing about the tiara was that she didn't borrow a tiara from the royal archives. Instead, she had a brand new tiara that was purchased as a gift from the Queen and Prince Philip. Apparently, they purchased this from the famous Gerard. Now, the tiara is made entirely out of diamonds set in platinum with floral scroll work and a large diamond of around 5 carats sitting on the top. Now, Sarah has also worn this several times throughout her marriage and even after her divorce. Now, her bouquet was designed by florist Jan Packer. The bridal bouquet was actually constructed in the shape of an S. The Duchess of York requested lilies of the valley and their traditional sprig of myrtle for the nosegay. So when Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, married Prince Edward on the 19th of June, 1999 at St. George's Chapel, it was literally signaling the end of an era of the 20th century for the Royal Windsor brides. Now, we were ushering in a new century, and gone were the big, puffy, iconic dresses of the 80s. Sophie looked very elegant in this wedding gown. She was also older than most of the wedding brides before her. She was 34 years old. She was a professional. So she was going to wear a dress that kind of signified a new era coming into the royal family. Now, the interesting thing about Sophie's gown was that her gown was actually kind of a coat dress. Many people say that Kate Middleton took inspiration not only from Princess Grace, but also from Sophie's gown, that it was kind of a split-looking coat dress. And we all know that Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, loves a coat dress. So the main element of the bridal look was, again, the coat dress that was made of an ivory silk organza with crepe and tulle, and it was all hand-dyed. Now, the bodice featured a V-neck with full-length sleeves ending in fluted cuffs. Now, this kind of gave it like a middle-age look, kind of medieval. Again, she had a lot of different styles kind of incorporated into her wedding dress, but it kind of had a hint of the Middle Ages with her sleeve. Now, the bodice was fitted waist that gave way to a slightly flared skirt that flowed into a long train. Now, again, a lot of people were having the long trains, but not quite as long as Princess Diana. Now, she did wear a tulle veil that was an inch longer than her train. So one of the interesting things about Sophie's gown, besides the coat dress and the sleeves, was that she had over 325 pearls and crystal beads throughout the coat dress, the train, and the veil, but they were added in very discreet patterns, giving the dress kind of this overall sheen to the outfit, but there was no actual design or pattern that was done on her dress the way that it was for Sarah or for Princess Diana. So Sophie's wedding day tiara was definitely unique. Normally royal brides either wear a tiara that is gifted from the royal collection, or they have a brand new one made, the way that Sarah Ferguson did on her wedding day. But in a nod to historic Great Britain, the tiara is thought to contain pieces from Queen Victoria's regal circlet tiara that had detachable elements, one that had gone unused for over 50 years. So this is very much Sophie, in my opinion, kind of the modern royal bride who brought in pieces of royal tradition into a modern look. So when Kate Middleton married Prince William in 2011, she really did embody a lot of the traditional wedding looks with a modern twist, and it was a beautiful dress that was not over the top. In my opinion, she did get some inspiration from Princess Grace when it came to the beautiful laced bodice that she had on her gown. Now, she did use the designer Alexander McQueen. Sarah Burton from Alexander McQueen is the one who actually worked with Kate to design her wedding gown. Now the dress was a mix of ivory and white satin gazar, and the skirt mimicked an opening flower thanks to a white satin gazar arches and pleats. Now the train measured around 8 feet. It featured a very narrowed waist and kind of a padded hip. This is a nod to the Victorian tradition of courtesy, which Alexander McQueen is known for. Now there was a very delicate pattern of lace across the bodice and skirt, which was handmade by the Royal School of Needlework based at Hampton Court Palace, using the Carrick-Macross lace-making technique, which originated in Ireland in the 1820s. Now, Kate's veil did have some symbolic flowers that were sewn into the lace pattern. These included flowers from the United Kingdom, the rose, thistle, daffodil, and the shamrock. Now, her veil was very simple, but it was made of layers of a very soft ivory silk tulle with a trim of hand-embroidered flowers. It was held in place by the Cartier Halo Tiara. Now, this was part of Queen Elizabeth's collection. It was commissioned in 1936 by King George VI for the Queen Mother, who later gifted it to her daughter for her 18th birthday. Now, Kate also wore a beautiful pair of earrings for diamond. They were like a drop diamond design with pave diamond with an acorn kind of suspended in the center. Now, this was a gift from her parents that showed their newly minted Middleton family crest, where they had acorns and oak leaves. So I love these earrings. And a fun fact, I do have a pair of replicas in my Amazon storefront. So if you want to get yourself a pair of these earrings, you can over in the storefront. But I think they're beautiful. They're classic. I love the fact that her parents added in the acorns as part of the Middletons. And the Middleton family did pay for this wedding gown. It was $250,000. And the Middletons did pay for it, as that is their tradition for royal brides. Now, she did have a pair of wedding day shoes that were not seen, but they were handmade by the team at Alexander McQueen. They were basic court shoes made of ivory, Duchess satin, and hand-embroidered lace to match the dress. Now, Kate did have a second wedding gown. This was called her wedding reception gown. Much simpler, but still very stunning. It was also designed by Sarah Burton. Now, this was a strapless dress that featured a sweetheart neckline, and it was nipped in at the waist with a nice A-line skirt. It was made of all ivory satin, again, the same as her first dress. It was embellished at the waist with a nice crystal belt, and a lot of people have kind of fastened their wedding look after this reception gown. And she had a nice little cropped wool cardigan. Again, both of her wedding looks were beautiful. So Princess Eugenie, when she married her longtime boyfriend, Jack Brooksbank, at Windsor Castle in October of 2018, she was a beautiful and stunning bride, but a very modern bride. Her dress had a lot of key features that made it very, very unique. Now, she chose the wedding designers Peter Pilato and Christopher DeVos. One of the very first things you notice is she did not wear a wedding veil. Instead, she just wore a beautiful tiara. And her wedding dress was very low cut in the back, featuring her scar. Now, it is said that she did not want to cover up her scar. It was very important for her to showcase that. It was a part of her. It was something that happened when she was a child. She had surgery, resulting in a very deep scar. She did suffer from severe scoliosis, and she wanted to make sure that people could see that, because she felt that was part of her survival and who she was as a person. So I applaud her for having this beautiful plunging backline and not hiding or covering up her scar. Now, the front of her gown has a very unique neckline. Some people think she took inspiration perhaps from Jackie Kennedy. It does kind of have a little bit of a 1950s feel. She did have very long sleeves and an ivory colored dress, but the most unique thing about her wedding gown was the actual fabric. Now, her designer, Peter Pilato, is known for his textile design, and the fabric of Eugenie's gown incorporated 4 symbols that were very central to the couple. They had the thistle for Scotland, which incorporated the couple's love of Balmoral. They had the shamrock for Ireland to pay homage to her mother, Sarah Ferguson's family. They had the York rose, and finally the ivy to represent the couple's home. The designers then sent their garland-like pattern to the Como region of Italy, where it was woven into a jacquard of silk, cotton, and viscose blend, which resulted in a very modern-looking fabric using a highly intricate weaving technique. Now, a lot of people were expecting, Eugenie to wear her mother's wedding day tiara. Again, that was a gift that was purchased for Sarah from the Queen and Prince Philip on her wedding day, but instead she opted for the Greville Emerald Kukushnik tiara. The tiara is made of brilliant and rose-cut diamonds that flank 7 large emeralds, which matched her emerald drop earrings that were given to her by her husband-to-be on her wedding day. Now, the back of her wedding gown, not only was it low cut to showcase her scar, but it kind of gave a bow-like feature. Now, the dress did not have a sash, but it did have a lot of volume in the back with several pleats that flowed into a full-length train. Now, Princess Eugenie also followed in Kate Middleton's footsteps by having a second wedding dress, or a reception wedding dress. Now, this second gown was designed by Zach Posen. Mr. Posen was inspired by the beauty of Windsor and the surrounding countryside. The choice of color reflects the blush of an English rose. Mr. Posen took his inspiration from the white rose of York. Now, this dress was a pin-tucked Plaisie, is cut on a bias and mixed with a signature drape. The white rose of York is subtly embroidered on both the shoulder and back, which hold together the cape. Now, the silk for the gown comes from Biddle Sawyer silk. Princess Eugenie is also wearing a hair slide belonging to Her Majesty the Queen. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Royal Brides Part 1. We will do a part 2 because there are many, many royal brides to include. But let me know, who was your favorite wedding dress that we covered today, and who are you the most excited for me to cover in the next episode? Please leave me your comments below. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and check me out on all of my other social media accounts. And stay tuned, guys. We will have Royal Wedding Dresses Part 2 coming out very soon. Thank you, and have an awesome and amazing day. Bye, guys.